Okay, not to brag or anything, but I feel like I'm the perfect person to talk about LSAT mistakes, considering I made like every single one of them. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Madison. It is nice to meet you. So you want a high LSAT score, like L Woods high, and you've done all the preparation. You've taken the practice tests. You're a logic game master. You can read at the speed of light. You have all of the tools you need to get that 180. But all of your hard work will amount to absolutely nothing if you make one of these 5 mistakes that I'm about to talk to you about. These mistakes are general guidelines for the exam as a whole. They're not like specific for each section. If you would like me to do a video about each specific section of the LSAT, I would be more than happy to do that. But these are just general LSAT testing day guidelines that you should follow. If you are new, you should subscribe to my channel. I would love to have you as a subscriber. If you want more tips on how to study for the LSAT, I do have a video in the cards, one of these 2 corners. I never picked the right one. And yeah, you should watch that. And without further ado, let's get into the LSAT mistakes. Mistake number 1, wasting all of your time on one question. This is so hard to avoid. I feel like looking at it from far away, it makes so much sense, but while you're taking the test, you get so caught up in it, you don't even realize it. So let's take the logical reasoning section, for example. There are 24 to 26 questions on the logical reasoning section of the LSAT. You have 35 minutes to complete the section. This means that you have roughly 1 minute and 25 seconds to complete each question in the logical reasoning section. So if you waste 4 minutes on one question, the entirety of that section is completely thrown off now because you've taken the time that you could have answered 3 questions and blown it on 1 question. Trust me, I'm a logical gal. I like solving things. If you put a problem in front of me, I could spend like easily 2-3 hours trying to solve this. I get really hung up on things. I like to find the solution, but the LSAT, not the time for that. You look at your watch, you see you've hit 1 minute 25 seconds, you move on. My main takeaway from taking the LSAT 3 times is that if it doesn't lend itself to an answer in about a minute, move on. And then you can come back to it later. So mistake number 1, do not waste all your time on one question. I know it may be hard to avoid this in the moment, but just stick to a strict, I have this much time per question, and it'll save you so much pain in the long run. Mistake number 2. This is so easy, and so many of you are gonna be like, why would I ever do this? Mistake number 2 is leaving a question blank. Never do it. So this kind of comes off the last one. If you are at 1 minute and 25 seconds and you're like, okay, I have to move on now, put an answer down. I don't care what it is. Pick the best one that you think it might be, mark the question saying you're gonna come back to it later, and move on. Never leave it blank and say, whenever there's 5 minutes remaining, I'll come back through and then I'll answer all these. No, just put an answer down. So if you find yourself thinking during the test, oh, I'll just come back and answer this later, then you get hung up on a question, there's 3 minutes left, boom, all of a sudden time's out, you didn't answer 2 questions, those are points left on the table. Never leave a question blank. Even if you're not happy with the answer you're putting down, at least you're putting an answer down. The LSAT does not penalize you for guessing. So just guess away, you can come back to it later when you know that you have time to do so. This one, number 3, is psychological. And it really is, this might be the most important mistake. Letting a mistake or an error on the test stick with you for the rest of the test. Here's an example, completely hypothetical, this didn't happen at all. A younger, more naive girl, she will remain nameless for the sake of this example, was taking the LSAT in October, maybe a snowy day, I don't know. And she was on the logic game section, and she left 4 questions blank because she hadn't seen this video and she didn't know that she should put an answer down. So she left 4 questions blank in the logic game section. That was the first section of the LSAT. For the rest of the test, half of her brain was on the test in front of her and half of her brain was back in section 1 being like, why did you leave those 4 questions blank? There's no point in taking the test anymore. You're done. No going to law school. Let's go back to the drawing board. Don't do that. If you mess up, which you will, unless you're perfect, if you mess up and you're thinking, oh my god, even if it's not even a big difference, like that mistake that girl made, it was me. That was a big mistake. But if you even have one question where you're thinking like, oh, I got it, I know I got it wrong. Like I'm thinking back on it, I know that I picked the wrong answer. Put it out of your mind. Do not think about it. You do not want it impacting the rest of your test, because it will. If you're sitting there focusing, if you need all of your brain power to do this intensely hard test, and your brain is still thinking about what you did 10 minutes ago, you're not hitting your full potential. You're not going to do as well if you're so caught up on the mistakes you made. I don't care. You live your life. Go home afterwards, cry into a pillow, scream a little bit, do whatever you need to do. That is fine. During the test, we are not beating ourselves up for mistakes. We'll do that after. Okay, next one. My next mistake is not being engaged. Now, the LSAT might have some of the most boring topics in the history of humanity. They might. I've read some reading comp passages and just been like, that was the most boring thing I've ever read in my entire life. So many times, I've read an entire passage of reading comp, I've read the entire question for logical reasoning, and my eyes were just glossy. And I'm thinking to myself, what did I just read? And then I've wasted time, I have to go back, I have to read it again. So you need to be engaged. Okay, let's take an example. Say the reading comp passage is about ancient art, okay? And that's the most boring thing in the world to you. You hate art, maybe. You need to put on your art historian cap, and you really need to take in that role, pretend you're an art historian. After every paragraph, every couple sentences, you need to think, what is this trying to tell me? Ask yourself questions to make sure you're staying engaged with the text instead of just kind of skimming it with your eyes. You need to engage, even if the subject matter is dull, boring, dry. Use a thesaurus, look up more synonyms. You need to find some way to engage with it. If it's about biology and you're not a biologist, well, now you are. You're a biologist for the next 15 minutes. Ask some questions to yourself to make sure that you're really absorbing all of the text. Now, the final mistake is becoming frantic or frazzled while taking the LSAT. I've done this. I think it's hard not to. I mean, the aforementioned time constraints, the testing conditions, I mean, with the flex now, it could be more or less stressful depending on, you know, depending on each individual person, your preferences. It's hard not to get frantic when something isn't working. It really is. I've been in a logic game and I'm looking at the time and I'm like, oh my God, like it's just not working. I'm plugging variables in and they're not fitting. I'm getting frantic. I'm not making inferences. I'm not drawing conclusions. I'm trying to force it to work. I'm like, I'm not even thinking anymore. Let's just put K here and do all the rules and see if it works. You know, it's like that kids game when you're trying to force a circle into a square and it's just not working. That's what happens when you become frazzled and frantic, and you're not going to get a lot done. I know it's really hard. But take those few seconds, breathe, do some brief meditation. It will really help you instead of trying to force things. That's the last thing you want to do. You're probably going to get more wrong. In that instance, it is so worth it to take a step back, breathe for a second, and then move on with a clear head. All right, everyone, that was my 5 mistakes to avoid on the LSAT video. I hope these were helpful for you. If you've taken the LSAT, let me know some tips or some mistakes that you made if you want to own up to those, or mistakes you avoided. If you're about to take the LSAT via flex in the next coming weeks or months, let me know if this video was helpful, and also good luck. And as always, if you ever want to talk about LSAT stuff or law school stuff in general, you can leave it in the comments below, or you can message me on Instagram. I would love to hear from you. And yeah, I think that's it. I think that's all I got for you today. I will see you in my next video. Bye.